Welcome to the first video of 2025. I was debating between a few topics to cover, but this one has been most relevant for me recently, and I thought it'd be helpful and interesting to share it with you. Also, you might notice that I sound a bit congested. I suppose it's that time of year where colds and flus are making their way around, but fortunately, I've got some good meds and should be back to normal by the next video. Also, I've got a bit of an intro for this video, but you can use the time code or the chapter markers if you're not interested and you just want to get right into it. I totally understand. So, ever since I moved to Florida about 2.5 years ago, the genre of my photography has changed wildly. For most of my adult life, I've focused on photographing mountains and waterfalls and forests, amongst other landscape scenes. However, where I live now, there isn't much in the way of landscape photography unless you really love shooting the ocean or around the Everglades. What there are tons of are birds, all sorts of birds. And fortunately, I live near two wonderful wetland preserves with all sorts of birds and lizards and even alligators. Now, because I've been spending a lot more time photographing birds, I decided to upgrade my camera to the latest Sony flagship, the A1 Mark II. Features like pre-capture and expanded burst mode and improved AI autofocus have already paid back with dividends in the few shoots I've already taken it with me. But with that comes a new challenge because this camera can shoot a blistering number of photos in no time, and it's easy to rack up those files, which is why I think it's so important to develop a review or culling workflow that suits you. Now, reviewing and culling is extra important for me, and it should be for any other Lightroom user who syncs their entire library to the cloud, because there just isn't a need to keep all of those photos, as you'll see in a second. I'd rather put some time up front to identify the best shots and get rid of the duplicates and low quality ones. Once that's done, I can feel confident that I'm only syncing my best photos that I can start editing, knowing that I'm not taking up unnecessary space. Of course, you're always free to keep the entirety of your shoot locally if you'd like, but as I've gotten older, I've subscribed to the philosophy of getting rid of as much unnecessary digital content as possible. Just because you have the space to store 1,000 photos that are almost exactly the same doesn't mean that you need to. And one last thing, I'll be the first to admit that I'm very new to bird photography. Because birds are so plentiful around where I live, that's what I use as my excuse to grab my camera and head out the door. I bring this up because you may be a seasoned bird photographer with a rock solid culling workflow, and what I show you may be overly basic, and that's totally fine. I still think there's always a merit to learning how other photographers manage their photos because you never know. There might be a tidbit that you weren't aware of that you can now incorporate into your own workflow. And of course, my culling workflow isn't specific to bird photography. You can apply all of these principles to portrait, event, and even landscape photography. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so here we are in Lightroom Desktop, and I'm starting in the local tab. And I like local because it's just a great lightweight way for me to browse a folder of images and do things to it like apply a pick or reject flag or even make a quick edit without having to spend the upfront time of syncing to the cloud first. So I go out, I take my photos of birds and lizards and alligators and all those wonderful creatures. And when I get home, the first thing I need to do is get the images off of the card onto a local drive. Now, this is a Sony A1 II, like I mentioned, and this is the first camera where I actually upgraded my internal media storage. Instead of using SD cards, I'm actually using CF Express Type A cards. They're crazy expensive, which sucks, but they have crazy read and write speeds, which is really important if you're going to use the high burst modes of these cameras. Now, I totally forgot to buy a CF Express card reader. Fortunately, though, for now, I could just connect the camera directly to my laptop using USB-C, and we can take it from there. So I'm going to show you what that looks like really quickly. All you need to do is connect the USB-C cable to your Sony camera, and then I use this option here, which will mount the two different cards as drives on my Mac. All right, so the gist of this workflow, I want to just give it to you up front. It's pretty straightforward, but it is functional and effective. First thing, obviously, we have to get the images off of the media card, either by connecting the camera or using a card reader. And then I'm going to use Lightroom Local because it really is a great file browser. Like, I'll be able to cruise through a folder of images that are locally on my computer. And I'm going to go kind of burst by burst. You'll see what I mean. It's very clear. And I'm just going to apply a pick flag for the photos that I want to keep. And I'm not going to do anything with the other photos. I don't need to mark them as rejected or anything like that. I just want to mark pics that I want to keep and then subsequently sync to the cloud. And so let me show you how this works. It's pretty straightforward, but I think if you watch someone else do it, you're like, oh, I didn't consider that. So let's begin. All right, so you'll see here in Finder, there is an untitled here and untitled here. These are the two CF Express cards that I have in my camera. And so I don't know which one has the RAW and which one has JPEG. That's kind of how I configure my camera. It writes RAWs to one card, it writes JPEGs to the other card. So I'm going to click on this one here. We'll go to DCIM, go into this subfolder. And so, yeah, these are the JPEGs. This is not the drive I want. So I'm going to go to this one here, select DCIM. And here you go. Here are the RAWs. And so 705 files. Now, I think I was at the preserve maybe 50 minutes, 50. The fact that I was able to take 700 photos, and it's not like I was constantly like nonstop. I would shoot a little bit, walk a little bit, shoot a little bit. So it's a testament to the ridiculous burst mode of this camera and why it's really important to go through and cull, because there is absolutely no need to have 50 of the same effective photo. So let's go ahead. I'm going to move this over here. I'll open up another Finder window here, and I'm going to use Bokeh. Bokeh is my external drive where I store my photos. I'll go to this to review folder here, and I took these photos on January 4th. So I'm going to create a subfolder called 2025-01-04 review. And then let's go back here, and I'm just going to copy all of these photos over. And you can see it actually does a pretty good job. Like, it starts copying over pretty quickly, and it won't take that much time. It'll take a few minutes, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes. And so I'm obviously going to fast forward this. One thing I want to point out, though, is you can see it's a total of about 40 gigabytes of files. And I'm sorry, but there's no reason. If you are like me, I have made peace with storing my library in the cloud. I love it. I love all of the benefits it affords me. There's no reason to store 40 gigabytes of photos, which you'll see in a minute are mostly the same photos. There are only like 2 or 3 photos from each burst that are worth keeping. So again, just something to consider. Same thing goes when you're talking about your local storage. If you have 80 terabytes of storage on a NAS, one of the things as I get older that I start thinking about is kind of legacy. So what happens when I pass away? Whether it's my wife or my family, now they're saddled with this drive, and I'm sure they're going to feel compelled to have to go through this entire catalog. And this is something actually my very good friend Matt Kloskowski and I talk about a lot. And he is in complete agreement with me. This is just a really it's something that I don't want to have to make my family feel compelled, like that they have to go through tens or hundreds of thousands of photos. I want to spend the time now to make sure that I have the best photos selected. So just something that I keep in mind with this kind of reducing digital clutter philosophy. All right, so this is actually the next day I'm recording this particular little snippet. I was editing this video and I realized there was a point also that I wanted to make that I forgot to make, and I'm going to blame it on this cold. But it's not just about, doing your culling and purging so that you can get rid of files to free up space. And yes, also to, make it easier, for example, on your family. If you think about if that's something that concerns you, those are all very valid. But, and here's an important point. It's so important that I actually wanted to record this and add it in. There is, without a doubt, a benefit to spending time reviewing your images to determine which ones are the strongest. Now, of course, it's subjective. What is strongest to you could be totally different to someone else. But I said this earlier, like, I know the photos I like. And that didn't just happen overnight, didn't wake up and I had that ability. It has taken years of thinking about and studying and analyzing my photos to determine the ones that I think are the best. And those are the ones that I invest additional time in editing and sharing with you. Like, I don't want to share subpar photos. I don't think anyone wants to do that. They want to share the photos that genuinely excite them. And for me, the photos that excite me start off as being kind of the strongest compositions and the best subjects. And so if I've got 20 of almost the same photo, there's something to be said about going through those 20 and finding the best one or the best two out of that series and then getting rid of the rest. So it's not just, again, about freeing up space. It's also about the skill of being able to analyze your photos critically and tease out, this is the best one. Not just this is the best one, but here's why this is the best one. Here's why I think this one is the best one. And I think the more you do that, the stronger of a photographer you're going to be. And so it kind of lends itself to why it's important to cull your photos. All right, so you could see the copy job is complete. We have all 705 images on my external drive here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and unbound these drives so that I can turn my Sony camera off. All right, so let's go back to Lightroom Desktop here. Again, I am in local, and I'm also clicking on Browse because this will allow me to navigate to the specific subfolder that I want. So I've got bokeh over here. That is the drive. Then I have to review. And then here is the subfolder that I created where I just copied all of those photos. I'm going to press P to hide the photos drawer just to give us some more screen real estate. Now, as I scroll down, you see what I mean by bursts. So like that's kind of what I do with this camera is that I'll just press the shutter button and it'll take these bursts. And in some cases, like this case, I mean, look at all of these photos. But same thing here, you could see a burst of photos. Here's a burst of photos, another burst. Again, some bursts have more images than others. It really depends on the nature of what the animal was doing. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go all the way to the bottom here. And we're just going to start from the bottom. So here's how I work. The first thing I do is I actually click on one of the images in the burst, and then I press and hold the shift key, and I click on the last image. So you could see that only this burst is selected. The reason why I do that is if I double click here, if I press the arrow keys and I keep going, it will only show me the images from that burst. It will not start going through the rest of the images, which will just kind of make it, overbearing. So I can only focus on this burst here. And again, what I'm going to do is apply a pick flag. And so if you hover over the pick flag here, you can see there it is there. Now the keyboard shortcut for pick is Z. So you can see if I do that, it marks everything, which I don't want. So I'm going to undo that. But Z will give you a pick flag and X will give you a reject flag. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through this, and none of these really do anything for me except for maybe this one, because I might crop in tight, and like I'll go through the entire series, and definitely I know that from this point on it's not good. So I'll back out, and I think this one right here, I like the way the bird kind of slots into the out of focus tree branches. And so I'm going to press Z. Let's go ahead and go back to grid here. And you can see only this image right there has the pick flag. If I click out, only this image has it. So I know that here we go, we're good to go. And so now it's basically a process of repeating. And I can make the thumbnails, the size of the thumbnails rather, smaller, just to have more kind of info density. So something like this looks good. I'll select this, the first image in this burst, scroll up, man, so many photos. Select it here, and let's go ahead and double click. And I'm just going really quickly looking at, usually I'm doing a kind of like a pass through without doing anything first, just understanding what the nature of the burst is. And so like, so far, nothing's really kind of exciting me. Like this is a very busy background. So in fact, yeah, I'm not really into any of these. And again, I mentioned that I am kind of like new to bird photography. There might be a photo here where you're like, this is like a crazy rare bird, or this is like a, doing something it never does. I don't know that, and I'm okay with it. I'm just looking at the photos to see which ones kind of speak to me. I know one thing I can tell you is I know which photos I like, and that's the only thing I concern myself with. That's really the only thing you should concern yourself with your photos. So unless it's a really kind of unique situation, if the photo doesn't do anything for me, it's getting deleted. So I know that in this entire batch, there's nothing there. So I'm just not doing anything. All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on to this next batch of an Anhinga. So see here, okay, you know, I can see the bird's head is starting. And actually, this is the benefit of pre-capture, because it took a series of images in advance. I think I have it set to a half second. So when I half press the shutter button, or when I press the autofocus button, I use back button autofocusing. I actually got a video of how I configure that right here, but it captured the previous half second. So it gives me this extra kind of buffer. You see where the Anhinga's head starts to raise. And so I'm looking through this, and, you know, I would say right here, that's the shot. I like the shape of the bird's head and neck. And then there's also good separation with this tree branch behind. So I'm going to press Z on this one, and I'll keep going through, see if there are others. And that's actually another important thing. I'm not saying you have to do just one shot from each batch or each burst. You can have as many as you want, you know, sometimes 2 or 3 or more. But usually I'm looking for at least one really good shot. But if there are others, I will happily flag it. What I don't want, as you can see here, is, I'm sorry, I don't need all of these photos. I don't. I just want the one that I think kind of resonates with me the most. And I think I found that. So let's go ahead here. Again, you can see there is the pick flag on this one image. This one, I seem to remember not really caring much about it. Yeah, I mean, this was way far away. And I was using a 100 to 400 with a 1.4x teleconverter. And you could see if I open up the info really quickly. There it is, you know, A1 Mark II, 100 to 400 with the 1.4x. So, yeah, none of these really do anything for me. Yeah. So I'm going to go out here. Now, if you want a bit of an immersive experience when you're doing this, what you can do is, again, I'm going to select all of these images here, and let's double click on this one, and I'm going to press F. What that's going to do is it's going to go into full screen mode. And so this makes it a little bit easier. You get to see even more of your image. And so let's just say, I really don't care about any of these images, but let's say I want this one. I'm going to press Z. You can see the little banner on the bottom there. It says flag is picked. So we're good here. And these are looking good. Like here, you can see kind of the head was scrunched down. Some of these are looking good. So again, what I'm doing is I'm going through all of them first. So we went through everything. I want the neck kind of fully extended. So I would say I will get maybe this one. And then I don't want that one because the head is kind of turned away, even though there's a nice little catch light on the eye. And then maybe that one, as it's kind of, the head's turning more towards me. So now I'll press F, which exits out of full screen view. And I press G. And again, you can see there is one image with a pick flag, and the other one is right over here. So we've just gone through this. Same thing. Let's repeat this. And I'm going to do a quick time lapse and show you the rest of it, because there's no reason for you to have to see all of these. But again, another Anhinga drying its wings off. And so here you can see that the head just starts to articulate closer towards me. And so again, first thing we're doing is we're going through the whole scene. And so right there, that's my shot. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and I'll go through this whole process, but I'm just going to speed it up like 1,000%. So you can kind of see me go through everything. And then I'll show you what I do to kind of get rid of the things I don't want, and what I do to sync them to the cloud, the keepers, that is. Now, one thing I want to point out is, depending on the way you enter full screen view, you might not get the results you want if you're using ratings or pick flag. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say I go with this burst of images here, and you can see we're just in this burst here. Now, from grid, if I press F, I'm in full screen view. Now, let's say this is the image I want, and I press Z. You can see it's picked. If I press F again, I'm back in full screen, but do you see how each of the images have the pick flag, which we don't want? So I'm going to press U. U will unflag the images. if you want to be in a full screen view where only the image that you see gets the rating or the flag, what you'll want to do is make your selection of the burst, just like I did, but then double click first. So here you are in this detail view, then press F. So now watch, let's say that's the image I want. I'm going to press Z to pick it. I'll press F to exit out, and you can see we're back in detail view, and I'll press G. Now you can see only this image has the pick flag. So again, what you'll want to do is don't go into full screen from grid, go to it, make your selection of your burst, double click, and then press F. All right, so I've gone ahead now, as you saw, and I reviewed each of the bursts, and I gave pick flags for each of the images in each burst that I thought were my favorites. So now it's time to get rid of everything else. To do that, we're still in this folder here. I'm gonna go ahead and click on this filter icon to the right of the search bar. And remember, we used pick flags. I didn't use reject flags or anything like that. So what I wanna do is I wanna see everything that doesn't have a pick flag. So all I need to do, you can see here are the 3 flags. And so I'm gonna select this middle one, and this will show me any image that has no flag. Go ahead. And now you can see that all of the images here are unflagged. None of the picks are here. In fact, really quickly, let's turn this off. You can see that there are 705 photos total. But when I filter out the picks, you can see that 35 of them were filtered out. So I have 35 photos out of those 705, which I'm totally fine with. Now, all I need to do is select all. I'm going to right click, go and delete these photos. Now you can see when I turn off the filter, I'm just left with the images that I love. And so if I just kind of quickly go through these really quickly, and actually like this one, I mean, it's okay, but I just wanted to keep it for something from that batch. And so again, just like these are all images that I know I can do something with. And actually this one I don't want. I'm going to give this an X. I actually don't want, I don't know why that was marked, but so be it. And so, yeah, look at that little alligator right there. Don't want to mess with those guys. So let's go ahead here. I'm just going to select this one and I'm going to delete it really quickly. Now, when I sync photos to the cloud, I don't usually use pick flags. I'm just using it for this particular purpose. So I'm going to select all of these photos here and I'm going to press U. That will remove the pick flag because these are my best photos. Now it's time to sync these to the cloud. So you can see there's a button up here. You can do this several ways. So let's bring out the photo drawer. You can either select all of the images here and right click and select copy 34 photos to the cloud. You can just click on this button here and that'll do that. Or you can right click on the folder here, select copy to cloud. Or if you click on the ellipsis here, same thing. You can copy to the cloud right there. There's a bunch of different ways. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to click on copy to cloud. And you can see up here what it's doing is it's starting the upload process. If I click on the cloud icon, you'll see there it says syncing 34 items. So this will take a few minutes. And once it's done, I'll show you what I do to wrap this up. All right, so I paused recording and I would say it took about 4 minutes for me to upload those 30 some odd images. Again, that totally varies based on how many images you're uploading, the size of the images. These are 50 megapixel images. There are about, I would say 50 megabytes a pop. And then of course your bandwidth speed. So you can see if I click on the cloud over here, we are synced and backed up. This is like my happiest message. I love seeing this in Lightroom. And so now we just need to finish things up in terms of organization and get the images into an album in cloud. So I'm going to click on cloud over here. And the default place where the images are stored when you sync them to the cloud is you'll want to expand this all photos by clicking on this disclosure triangle. And then you'll see recently added. So I'm going to expand that. And you can see 5 minutes ago, 34 images. Well, now 6 minutes ago. So when I click this, here are the images. You can see each one has a little icon indicating that they are synced to the cloud. And now it's a matter of getting them to an album. So let's go ahead. I'm going to expand photo library here. This is where all of my images are. You can see I already have 2025 because I got some shooting in. There's January. And that's the previous shoot that I did on the 2nd of January. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to right click, create album. I'm going to deselect, include the selected photo. Let's go ahead. I'm going to type in 2025 01 05 dash. This was green K, preserve, and click create. Now I'll go here, select all of the images, and then drag them into that newly created album. You can see here, this album, all of the images, they're in the cloud. They're available in all versions of Lightroom. So if I'm on mobile or on the web, they're all here, including the edits that I apply, which is why I absolutely love syncing my library to the cloud. And now there is one final thing to do. We need to go back to the Finder here. Remember, we still have these photos. There are 68 because there are 34 RAW files and then 34 XMP sidecar files. I don't need these. These are in the cloud. So remember that the last thing you'll want to do, if you want, is go here, and I'm just going to delete that folder, and then I can empty the recycle bin just to get rid of it and free up space on this drive. All right, so there you go. That is my pretty straightforward but functional and effective culling process when I have a bunch of images from a bird shoot. Again, I hope you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, there's something there that I picked up, and maybe I'll incorporate it into my own workflow. As you can see, I don't rely on any third-party apps. I know a lot of people will use something like Photo Mechanic, but I hope you saw that, especially not during the time lapse, but when I was walking you through the images, Lightroom Local does a really good job of rendering the images quickly, where I can go through them, scrub through them, and select the ones that I want to keep, which again, anything that I can do to kind of save some time will make it that I'll want to repeat that process in the future. Probably going to head out in a few hours for another shoot, so I'll probably be doing this workflow again very soon. Of course, this is just one small component of Lightroom. There are tons related to Lightroom Desktop, Lightroom Mobile, and Lightroom Web. This is a new year, so if you kind of want to pick up Lightroom, maybe you've been thinking about switching from Lightroom Classic, or you're new to Lightroom and you want to learn everything there is to know about it, please do check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. It'll teach you everything you need to know about all of the cloud-based surfaces of Lightroom. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Now, I use the local tab a lot in this video, so if you're not sure what it is, that was probably one of the biggest updates to Lightroom last year, well, not 2024, but 2023 at Adobe Max. So if you want to learn more about that, I've got this video here. And of course, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. It's going to be a fun 2025, everyone. Thanks a lot.